Carlo Cottarelli, economist and director of the Observatory on Public Accounts of the Cattolic University in Milan, is our guest today. First of all, thanks, Director, for joining us.
Happy to be with you.
Because of Covid-19, the whole world is facing the worst crisis since the Great Depression. The first one truly global, a kind of World War III for the economy of the world. In Italy, after the sanitary tsunami, another tsunami is yet to come, this time on the economy of the country. In Italy, you are known as the cost-cutting man of the spending review, your role in the past Letta's government. Instead, now you are favorable to a massive intervention of the public debt.
I've always been of the opinion that in a major recession you have to increase public deficit and public debt. I took the same view, for example, in 2008, 2009, on the occasion of the Lehman Brothers financial crisis. And so I'm not, because now we are in a deep recession, we have to increase deficits, public deficit and debt. Of course, if we had started with a lower public debt to GDP ratio, we would be able to do this more easily. We would be able to increase our deficit more easily, as, for example, Germany is doing. We have high public debt, so we have to rely on somebody else's support. We have to rely on the support coming from, at the moment, most of the support to Italy is coming from the European Central Bank.
Europe, with the Eurogroup, agree on a few measures to mitigate the economic impact of the pandemic that could provide more than €500 billion for companies, workers, and health systems. Another important decision to cushion the economic impact of the virus outbreak is the recovery fund that will contribute with another €500 billion. So do you think that this is an adequate answer for the emergency?
As I said, the bulk of the resources coming to Italy and to the rest of Europe is actually coming from the European Central Bank with its purchases of government securities and other securities, the quantitative easing operations. Italy should get this year from the ECB in net terms something like 170 billion, which is about 10% of GDP. So a deficit of up to 10% of GDP can be financed by Italy entirely by relying on the resources coming from the European Central Bank. Another 50 billion are coming from the ECB in terms of rolling over Italian debt currently held by the ECB, which, as I said, will be rolled over. We have the resources from the SURE, because it's so-called SURE for unemployment benefits from the European Commission. We have the ESM resources, which I hope Italy will use because they come without conditionality. It would be nice to have also the recovery fund because the situation is really complicated this year, so it's better to have, if anything, an extra amount of resources without having to rely entirely or mostly, not entirely, but mostly on the resources of the European Central Bank.
Coronavirus emergency pointed out even more strong the contradiction among the union members. According to the expectation, the GDP, the gross domestic product of Italy, of course, will fall down by 9%. So how do you imagine the post-pandemic Europe?
But the shock is large also for other European countries. On average, the euro area, according to the projections of the IMF, will have a decline in GDP of 7.5% this year. Italy is a bit more, 9.1%. But at least half of this is explained by the fact that even before Italy was not growing very much. The other half is a number of other circumstances, including the fact that Italy has been hit particularly hard by the pandemic. How will I imagine Europe after? I hope that this becomes an occasion to move together. And in part, we are moving together. What the ECB is doing with respect to how the 2008-2013 crisis was handled is completely different. So there is much more solidarity than there used to be. But now we became used to this, and people don't even recognize that we're getting this huge support from the ECB. So there is a lot of bad feelings are coming up, are originated at the moment in Italy against Europe. I don't think this is justified, but I'm very worried about this. There are people who are openly talking about Italy, a referendum, not just people. We know there are political parties now who are arguing for a referendum to leave the euro area. I don't think it would be a good idea, so I'm a bit concerned about this.
What does Italy have to do to rise without losing its own identity?
We have a number of reforms that we have to implement to grow faster. If we don't grow faster and our GDP keeps shrinking with respect to the rest of the euro area, we will count less and less in the euro area, and our voice will be heard less strongly. So I'm talking about a major reform that is needed in Italy is the reduction of bureaucracy and red tape, which is making more difficult to have both public and private investment. And without investment, a country does not grow, or does not grow fast enough if you don't have enough investment. We have a major problem with reforming the justice system. The justice system is very slow, and that's also a major impediment to doing business in Italy, as the World Bank indicator suggests. We don't spend enough for public education. That's also very important. It's a very important drive for long-term growth. So there are all these things that need to be fixed. Probably would also, apart from the current situation, it would also be useful to have a more efficient spending in some decline in the spending to GDP level, being careful, however, not to cut something that is important, and less pressure on the tax side. So there are a number of things that we have a major problem with tax evasion also, a major problem with tax evasion. So these are the things that we need to do to grow faster, and then if we grow faster, we will be able to maintain our identity, and we'll be able at the same time to have our voice heard more loudly, more clearly in Europe.
Coronavirus tsunami will force Italy to overcome its own congenital evils that you just said. You wrote it in your book, The 7 Deadly Sins of the Italian Economy, that Italy is affected by bureaucracy, tax evasion, corruption, etc. But does Italy stand a chance of succeeding in spite of everything?
The problem is that we respond well to emergencies, and then when it comes to the routine, we perhaps are not as committed. So we need to remain committed after the end of the emergency.
Thanks, Director Cottarelli, and thanks to you all for watching.